you've got to take care of yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's special broadcast. Every broadcast, Jeff, is special.
They're all special.
They're all special. This is the Jeff Heilman Project. We're so glad that you've tuned in. We're so glad that you are watching on YouTube, listening on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify. We are here with a very special guest, our friend, pal, and mentor, Rob Angel. Great to have you online with us today, Rob.
Oh, good to see both of you. My pleasure, my pleasure.
Rob, Jeff, I think you should do Uncle Rob, as we call him affectionately here in the house. Yep. Can you give Uncle Rob an introduction and why perhaps we have these awesome props here?
We can. And first of all, Rob, thanks for joining the call and for agreeing to do it. So with us, everybody, I kidding aside, and as much as Rob and I have been friendly over the last I think we're coming up on 7 years now. We have on the call somebody who has crushed it. The Jeff Heilman Project is really about bringing the humanities to entrepreneurship and bringing the human factor, art, creativity, food, friendship, community, relaxation. And so if you look at what this stands for, which is the antidote to burnout for entrepreneurship, with the antidote to burnout being the problem statement and the mission statement for this podcast, I have been looking forward to this for a long time, and I didn't know how to do it. I've wanted to interview Rob Angel since before we even had a podcast. But a little bit about Rob. Rob is from the Pac Northwest. He is a waiter. He's been a server, and I think that was the last job he had before he started what went on to become Pictionary, the best-selling board game in the world for a period of 16 years before he finished his licensing agreement and he and his partners agreed to divest themselves of the rights to Pictionary in exchange for what has been really an incredible last 20 years of traveling the world and meeting and enjoying total freedom. So, Mr. Rob Angel, thank you for joining us today. And would you like to say a few opening words as we kick off today's episode of the Jeff Heilman Project?
Jeff and Jessica, I love you both. And Jeff, I love how you phrase everything, man. Divest ourselves of the rights. I was just saying, we sold that SOB and really moved on. Same thing, semantics.
Trying to be kind, Rob.
No, I'm looking forward to this. We've known each other a long time. So whatever comes up and comes out, let it rip, and it'll be a blast.
Awesome.
Well, I when we were setting up for today's broadcast and you asked, well, what do you want to talk about? I was like, I really just, you're so much fun. We have such a good time. I mean, anyone who can create a game or assembly, not even just you. I remember talking to you over time that it wasn't even necessarily your intention to create a game per se, as much it was a way to congregate and grab and group people together so that we could do this, so that you could make a lifestyle out of, having fun. And what better way to bring people together than to have something as fun as an activity that everybody could participate in. And part of that was the question I remember I originally asked you was the importance or what you felt about the concept of living to work versus working to live, which is what this podcast is all about. Is like, how can we turn whatever we're interested in, whatever sparks our creativity, and then figure out, is there a way that we can turn that into a business or profit from being able to do that? So that was kind of where I wanted to go with this conversation was how is you've lived this way a while now. You decided at a young age this is the way you wanted to live. How's it worked out for you? Is it something that we should strive for?
I don't know why I'm laughing. The whole live to work or work to live. I think it's situational, right? There's certain times in our lives where you really do need to work hard, and to live, right? And so it's finding that spark and that thing where all of a sudden, as you say, you're not working anymore to live. You're just living to work. You're just enjoying the hell out of yourself, making a little money, having a little fun, creating and being, protective of your brand. That's when things get interesting and more creative and easier, more work, but easier. And so, yeah, so it's just a matter of finding that spark, finding that thing, finding that product, finding that business, right? They tell you to follow your passion, but they rarely tell you how to find your passion.
Oh, that's good.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And you use a really good analogy in your life and in your book about that. And it's really about.
Take a second to introduce the book, because you introduced the game, but you didn't introduce the book.
So the game is really, really well known, Pictionary. And then the story, Rob Angel's life of how he grew up, had really a pivotal moment, which I'm going to ask Rob to talk a little bit about, and effectively comes up with the idea for Pictionary, which goes on to sell, what, 38 million? Do we have a final count to date of the number of games?
We don't. It was 38 million when I owned it.
Yeah. They're still selling.
2001. So that's 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And Dell's had the brand, so they don't give me numbers, but I got to believe we're well over 50 million.
Got to be at least 50. Yeah. And I would think probably closer to double the 38, because you've had the same amount of time with Expectations and Worldwide Games and Pictionary Junior. And, a lot of people might say, well, gosh, why do you have to talk about success? Man, it's hard work getting a business up and running, and you need to celebrate the victories when compared to the overall breadth of the work that needs to go into building something like that. And then the book, which I'd highly recommend to anybody watching this, if you're interested in humanities, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, and if you want to hear a great story, I've read Game Changer by Rob Angel. I've read it twice now. I read the first 2/3 of the book basically on the hard work, and then I went back and started again and read, because I really wanted to get a feel for what did it take. We can all talk about success and victory, and that's fun, but I wanted to understand what was actually involved and what you had to go through in order to build this. So if we can, though, I want to go back to that seemingly two moments in time, and they seem to play off each other in a juxtaposition. It's very interesting regarding exactly what you just said, which is finding that spark. The first half of this two-half moment seemed to me to be your dad losing his job at Alaska Steel and Supply. That seemed to really be the impetus to be like, whoa, I need to make a serious assessment of my situation to make sure this never happens to me. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then kind of that transition of that finding your aardvark, or that spark, to where it's like, am I the only one of these four that sees the opportunity here? And talk a little bit about that transition if you can.
Sure. It's a big part of the story, big part of the book. I was 18 years old. I've always been working my whole life, eighth grade, very young. But I worked, place my father worked, and I saw him as the executive of this steel company. And I'd see him in his desk, and I'd see him, this big man on campus and making decisions. I thought that was pretty cool. So, like a lot of children, I want to be my dad. So I took on his dream, his goals, his job. And I didn't really stop to think about what I wanted, because it just seemed like a logical progression. So I get to college, 18 years old, and I still have this vision of myself behind the desk, and I'm taking all the classes necessary for that. But I sucked. I got to tell you, I was a terrible student. And it's not because I'm stupid. It's because I didn't want to do it. Yeah. I didn't know at the time. This is all hindsight. So I just thought at the moment, actually, I did think I wasn't that smart. I didn't understand these concepts. But I just realized later I didn't want to be there. But the pivotal moment was I was going to stick it out, and I was going to get a business degree. Halfway through my sophomore year, my father gets fired. So now, instead of, going, oh, woe was me, I'm going, no, wait a minute. I don't have to have my dad's dream anymore. If he can get fired,
yeah,
I could get fired. Screw that. I am not going to let anybody have sway over me. I'm not even sure at that moment I said I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I certainly didn't want his job.
You didn't want to put a bunch of time into a career and then have somebody controlling when it ended.
Right. Well, Jeff, as we know, and it's this whole freedom thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be controlled. And so I started just kind of plugging away. And this kind of is like that moment where things just kind of fall into place. I was taking a few and started taking some entrepreneur classes, not because I want to be an entrepreneur, just because they seemed interesting. I excelled at those, right? As a buddy once said, all the classes that didn't have a yes and no answer, I'm brilliant.
You did great. Yeah. Where you had to creatively think.
Yeah, if I have to create, I'm in. Don't make me, do some math and do the accounting. Forget it. I'm done. It didn't interest me. And so I'm going, this is great. And so I just naturally fell into that job, if you will, being an entrepreneur. And that opened my eyes, my heart, my arms to being an entrepreneur. And so that was the new mindset that I developed rather than, I hate being a businessman. I didn't know I hated it until I started, right? You got to go. That's where finding your passion, that's where they don't tell you to find it. It just kind of fell into place, but I was open to it, right? I'm always prepared. So,
did you have any other business ventures between the time that you saw your dad get fired and the time that you actually started Pictionary? Was there any like little test runs of things? I looked for it in the book and I may have glossed over it, but I didn't see. Did you try anything else besides the board game business?
The universe works in weird ways. It was my first foray into entrepreneurship and it, hit a home run. But I did it because of these entrepreneur classes. I approached in Spokane, Washington, where I grew up.
That's right.
There was a pizza place.
Pizza place. Now I remember.
Pizza.
Yeah.
And he had these beautiful calzones. So I decided I'm going to be the calzone king. And I'm going to franchise these things all around the country. So this is my first idea that's going to make $1 million. Didn't work out. His wife wanted to save it for the children, and they didn't want it, but it didn't matter. It didn't happen.
Mrs. Pete was not on board.
Mrs. Pete was not on board. It was like two little boys. Me and Pete is his name. We're sitting on the couch like, hey, can we have a franchise? She's going, shut up. That's what I heard. I don't know what she said. That's what I heard.
That's what you heard.
So the answer was no. But I kind of wet my whistle. It gave me a taste of this, right?
Plus, you got to see, like trying to buy a business, there's due diligence, there's looking at finance, there's looking at raising capital. Then you've got to have the imagination engine going in your mind of like, what's this going to do to my daily routine? And when am I going to quit my job? And what's the location going to be? Like, and I think you pitched it at $50,000. You didn't have $50,000 to go into the pizza franchise business. So all of that is like a dress rehearsal for being in business for yourself. I
did not do any due diligence. There was zero. I didn't find out if anybody liked Pete's Pizza besides me. I did look at what it was going to cost to run this. I didn't
trying to be kind.
I did zero outside of going, hey,
Pizza's
I think I want to do Pete's Pizza.
Right.
I wrote up like one paragraph.
Sure.
Hey, Pete,
3x5 card business plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's time to think. But in this case, I was like 22 and I'm going, let's just give it a try.
Right.
So yeah, there was no thinking, which also is exactly what happened with Pictionary. We can get to that in a minute. Don't overthink starting. Don't overthink everything because that's the paralysis.
That is literally the next question on my list, which is then we pivot to that creative spark where you see the opportunity. You're playing charades on paper, right? Paper charades with your friends in the dorm. Then something clicks and you're like, wait a minute, these people are having fun. And I don't remember where the word alpine was like the first time somebody else guessed one of the words. And it seemed like that was a spark too.
We made it up for the book. I have no idea what the first word was.
You have no idea. Okay. Well, that's candor for you, ladies and gentlemen. But then you get to this point where you're hesitating a little bit. Talk us through, you're a young guy, you have an ambition to be in business. Obviously getting the words on the cards, like the Trivial Pursuit format for delivery, that was a stumbling block for a while. But talk about, getting stuck in your head and then getting through that and then what comes after.
So I move in with 3 college buddies, high school buddies into a house. We had no money, sharing rent, still waiting tables. And it was a nice lifestyle. I kind of enjoyed it, right? I had my freedom, got to do what I want, but I knew it wasn't my life. I knew I wasn't going to be a waiter the rest of my life. I mean, we all have kind of this opinion of ourselves, this vision of ourselves when we're growing up. And then mine was a businessman, and that went away. So now I kind of have to create a new business vision for myself. And it wasn't thought out. It wasn't, okay, I'm going to sit and meditate. I was like, this ain't it. So by subtraction, I didn't know what I was going to be, but I knew I wasn't going to be a waiter. I got rid of that. So this whole notion of being open to whatever's going to happen. So we started one night. One of my roommates said, "Hey, you want to play this charades on paper?" Sure. Didn't know my life was going to change. Didn't know what was going to happen. But I get off the couch and, beer in my hand, and we start sketching words. And we're up all night long. I mean, all night long. And then the next night, and the next night. And we're just having this community, this fun, this connection. And I didn't know these words at the time, this collaboration. I just knew it was fun. That was it. It was fun. And then night after night, so I started thinking about it and really enjoyed it. Then the old entrepreneurial, I got to change that word. That's so many letters and syllables. Spelling it's impossible.
I woke up this morning thinking about that, Rob. That was, how when you're in that lucid point where you're 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up thinking about the word entrepreneur with your face next to it. And actually, it's French, and it's entre, which is in between. It means in between, and preneur, which means to take. So it's the in between taker or the middleman. That's what the word actually means. Which
wow,
I don't know why.
I agree with Rob. We should change it.
Yeah, we should make it maybe shorter. But that's it's middleman's a big deal, and that's a big word.
Thank goodness for spell check when I type it.
NEUR. Wait a minute.
Well, what I hear from both sides here, that's kind of my role here on this podcast, is to kind of
She's
facilitate.
the den mother.
I hear Rob saying that he's just being open, which to me is translating into being present, like being like the right here, right now. And I feel, and we all feel whenever we hang out with you, Rob, is that you are very much so an advocate for living in the present, living in the right now. Just do it, but not necessarily. I mean, you use wisdom and discretion because you're not going to go and, because you value life and you value others. And so having this core value of being present is so important. And how fortunate, I mean, can you speak to it all? Like when did the importance of being present, like what age were you? Because it sounds like even at 19, you were understanding from a very young age the importance of being present. Was that something like your mom or your grandma or another family member was like, hey, live for today? Is there anything that you can share about that? Hey everybody, this is Jessica. I'm so excited to offer to you this new service and this ability that you have to text in your questions, comments. Maybe you have some situations that you'd love for Jeff and Jessica to try to tackle along with you. You can text us now at 203-646-1472. Your phone carrier may have standard rates that apply, it being a text, but this is a free service from us to you in which we would like to participate with you in an ongoing conversation about how we can help and what we can possibly do for you. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.
That's kudos for you. I love it when I'm asked a question I've never heard before, so I make it up.
Sure.
However, it's when you're being interviewed, just make up stuff anyway. Interesting. I've always been present, and when I'm not, I'm unhappy. Right? I'm always thinking, when you're thinking ahead, and even as a kid growing up, we would play games at the house, and I was present then. I would love playing games. So we're talking about board games. It was easy for me to be in the moment. Maybe I'm just not that smart. Maybe I just don't, I don't know what it was, but being present, you know when you're in it. Like most things in life, you may not search it out. You may not go, I've got to be present today. But in those moments when you are, when I was, I knew it. I felt it. Right? There's nothing else existed. And that's, I mean, that's a really good point. And so with Pictionary, to riff on that, I was completely and totally present. I wasn't thinking about the job. I wasn't thinking about the waiting tables. I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. That was this. I absolutely know for sure is true. All we were worried about and thinking about was that moment of guessing that next word. That was it.
Yeah.
That's what created the bond and the friendship of, one or two people weren't into it. They weren't being present. We wouldn't have had that much fun. Right. And so it kept us present. That energy kept us in that moment. And that's where the light bulb went on.
And that's what we love about playing the game. And I have you were commenting on the old box. I mean, this is the first edition. I can recall going to Toys R Us and buying this game in what was it? 80? What year are we talking?
Is this the one you had from your parents, or did we buy this since?
No, this is like from when I was a kid.
Well, I'm sure there's a code on here we could look at some point and tell when it was published, but Rob can tell just by looking at it. It's.
If that's his first edition, that was probably 1987.
Okay.
So we're right in the thick of mass.
Actually, I lied to you. That might be in 1986. Actually,
I would have been 9 years old when we went and we purchased this. But what playing this game has always done for our family, which is why it's the only game I can honestly say I still have from when I was 10 years old, is that it brings you present, is that you cannot play this game and not be within that time gap of the little sand, the little timer turning. You cannot be anywhere else but exactly right where you are, right in that moment in time. And so not only does it draw people together and bring people together, which is what I think speaks to the 50 million units, 100 million, the long legacy lasting of the creation of the game, is that you were able to, in your ability to be present and to be open, you led to the ability for so many other people to be able to be present. So we just really want to speak to that.
It's part of our culture now.
Yeah.
I mean, this game is part of humanity, and that's, again, when we look at what people have to do in entrepreneurship, they work so incredibly hard and they are present, but they give up a lot of things in the process of that. Some of them delay starting a family. Some of them delay having vacations. I know I didn't take vacation for probably 10 or 15 years. And, I look back at it and I just think, I could have benefited so much by adding a little bit of humanness to the rise that we were going through. I think it's a good segue because I want to go back to one really important conversation in the history of this game and your career, Rob. Take me back to the first conversation that you had with your aunt and uncle in the Four Seasons Hotel in Vancouver, back when you were trying to get effectively some basic startup capital together so you could get your first 1,000 games printed. I think that is such a pivotal part of the history. It might seem like a simple thing, but I don't think that was a simple thing, and I don't think it felt that way for you going up there to pitch your uncle. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, they say, you want freedom, you want to be an entrepreneur. It's the worst possible thing to get started with freedom. You're working 24/7. No, don't let them fool you, right? It's hard work, and it's fun, but it's hard work. Going back to college, I put myself through school. When Dad got fired, I had to pay for my own college, right? There's another layer to that. Not only did I have to decide that I want to be him, I had to figure out if I was going to pay for it on my own. He ran out of money. And so I was determined to finish school. Well, I was waiting tables, no big deal. Fifth year. End of college, last semester, I ran out of money. Tuition had gone up, blah, blah, blah. And rather than quit again to earn money, I went to my uncle, who was well off, and borrowed $2,000. Deal was, I had to pay him back 9 months after graduating, and there was no set time, right? As long as it took, it took however long it took. Well, to me, it was really important to live up to that obligation. I mean, they say you can leave your troubles behind, but they're going to be there when you get back. Doesn't matter if he's a relative. I had to live up to this obligation. So I put him a check in the mail. But when I didn't have any money, which, when you're waiting tables happens, I put a note in the mail. Hey, Uncle Jerome, hope you're okay. Talk to you next month. That was it. And so fast forward 3 years, we're up in Vancouver. And now instead of asking for $2,000 for college, I'm asking for $35K. I did not want to go through family and friends. That's how you do it. That's a slog. And he was the only guy, quite frankly, I knew that had $35,000 in the bank.
Yeah.
Call him up, we go to the meeting, and my partners and I had 2 partners by then. So we had figured a pretty good shtick on how to play, and he'll be fine, and they'll love the game, and they'll give us the money. He might have been the only guy in the history of Pictionary who didn't understand the concept. I'm like, you're kidding. I mean, I get this charades on paper, Uncle Jerome. Nah, I don't get it. I go, Jesus Christ. Him and his wife, they go in the back room. And Terry and I, my partner, are like beside ourselves. What have we done? This is our shot. And then we're going, oh, we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. He comes out and he says, I have no idea what your business plan is, what your goal is, how this is going to work. I don't have a clue. However, I know you as a person, Rob. I know who you are as a man. He called me a mensch. I'm a man of my word. I live up to my responsibilities. And he goes, I'll loan you the money. That's why I loaned the money. Not because he really understood my business plan, but because that was it. And he did tell me later when he told about it, I go, what did you and Annie Ann talk about in the back room? And he goes, well, I called my accountant to see how much I could write off on my taxes. He'd never expected to see a nickel back.
Yeah.
But he did okay with that.
He did okay. And Auntie Ann, I'm sure, was grateful for that pivot. And then I'm trying to remember, did Gary, the late Gary Paul Everson, a tribute is due to his contribution, and to Terry, were they all 3 in the car with you driving up, or was it just you and one other partner? Who went with you on the trip?
Just me and Terry. We were the front boys for this little project. We all overlapped with everything, but in this one, it was, Terry and I worked out this beautiful shtick. So when you've got a partner, you've got to know your limitations, their strengths, their limitations, your strengths. And so I'm a little, as we've discussed, and Jeff knows, Jessica knows, a little, seat of my pants. So sometimes you need a partner who's a little more down to earth, a little more, does the numbers, as Jeff said about Pete's Pizza, can do the spreadsheets. I couldn't do that. So we were a perfect team on knowing what we could and couldn't do together. We did have a shtick that we did, because I'm the creative and I was very emotional. So if somebody pitched something that we didn't like, particularly about Pictionary, I would lose my mind. I would, I was never mean, but I go, you're wrong. This is our game. Da, 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 da. And I would their eyes would be wide. And about halfway through, I'd get a little tug on my pant leg, and it'd be Terry, and I'd be bugging out. And Terry'd go very calmly, I think what Rob was trying to say was. So we're the perfect, good cop, bad cop.
Well, it seems like the one problem that you guys dealt with the entire time, it wasn't capital. It seems the number one problem you dealt with for the entire history of the game was inventory. Figuring out how to get the right inventory in the right places. Is how far off am I on that assessment?
Are you talking about our inventory? How do we get rid of it? Or are you talking about how do we build inventory?
Well, how do you keep the right amount of inventory in the right places and speculate on how much you're going to sell and then fulfill all the orders? For example, that seemed like there was some pressure between a potential sale at JCPenney and your ability to fulfill orders with your Nordstrom buyer. And you turned down a sizable order in order to maintain your inventory levels and make good on your word to take care of the smaller bookstores and shops that were selling your game versus a quick payout. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. So when we did 1,000 games by hand in my apartment, that was our test market. That's how we used the $35,000.
Oh,
and yeah, that was it.
That sounds awful, by the way. I mean, fun, but scary.
It was a blast. We spent, here's a little side note. we figured, and we have it on paper, it cost us $22 hard cost for those first 1,000 games. We sold at wholesale for $15.
Yeah. Yeah.
We lost $7 a game. Can you imagine being on Shark Tank?
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Wonderful.
We only lose $7 a game. Yeah.
See, this
we had to get the game out there. We had to.
Do you hear that encourages the 5,000 units of cookies that I made and lost money on?
10,000 units of cookies.
Oh, now we're getting personal, kids.
We lost $8,700 in about 2 weeks.
How many cookies did you eat, Jeff?
I ate 2.
Yeah, he can't eat the profit. Can't eat the product.
That's right.
Jeff,
but yeah,
I don't even know exactly what happened, but God love you if you're trying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
We tried.
That's right.
We met the deadline.
We did meet the deadline.
That was my
That's
objective.
Right.
Meet the deadline, no matter what the cost.
The story goes, we knew, I mean, everything we did, we had no information. There was no internet. You couldn't just go online. How do you sell games in Seattle, Washington? Right? You do that now. 4,000 responses. So we just did what felt right and our intuition told us. And you should still do that. I still say too much information muddies it up. Just kind of go. There's times to be logical and get information, but sometimes you just got to go with your gut. And that's what we did. And we knew with a limited inventory, and we did 10,000 games managed, not worth going into. Now we've got 10,000 games. Our number one job was to get those games into as many people's hands as possible, period. That was it. And the second job is to get them off the shelf. When you're starting out, it's a two-pronged thing. And so we've got these 10,000 games. We're down to about 9,000 games. And I'm out there every day selling to anybody and everybody, right? We realized we were selling fun, not a game. Everybody likes fun. Everybody can sell fun. Not everybody can sell a game. There was 3 toy stores in Seattle. If I'd have sold those 3 toy stores like everybody else was, I would have sitting there and I would have gone, okay, when are they going to reorder? What do we do? So when we realized we were selling fun, I was selling to everybody, department stores, toy stores, knick-knack stores, pharmacies. Who does that, right? We're the ones who started that because we just needed alternative distribution. I think it's called disruption now, but we're disrupting everybody. We knew we need to get in many people's hands. So we're on the phone, or we're in the office one day. JCPenney calls out of nowhere. We don't no idea how they found us. And they said, we'd like to buy 9,000 games. That is so weird. We only have 9,000 games in our warehouse. Boom, done. Let's do it. So we hang up the phone, and I'm like on cloud 9. This is maybe the best moment of this whole process.
Sure.
I mean, I'm a master salesman, even though it's just a phone call. I have no idea how it got there. But then we started, Jeff, analyzing what this really meant. Mm. And so we're talking and we're realizing we don't have control, right? The key to our success, there's 10 keys, but one of them is controlling that product. We needed the product to be physically where we could see it. If the game was off shelf, if they had sold out at a retail outlet, we had to know about it because we were doing store checks. We would call them, you need to reorder. Well, what if JCPenney, this big behemoth, takes the 9,000 games, put them in a warehouse, and they take 3 weeks to distribute them? What if they distribute them and the individual stores don't put them out? What if they don't promote it? What if we don't get paid on time? There's a bunch more, but all of a sudden these questions started coming up. Key for us, control and getting the pencil into as many people's hands. We turned them down. It was painful. We're doing math, 9,000 times $15 wholesale, but it was absolutely the best thing we ever could have done. So managing the inventory was part of it. We were just managing our control.
So Jessica talks to me about this all the time, about how, like, for me to take an hour off or 2 hours off to go play golf or something, like, I just don't. We're in build mode, right? We've gone broke a couple times. We're building it back, and we're in build mode, and I don't like taking that time. But what she's pushing on, and you're bringing up a really important point. She talks to me about this all the time. She's like, you have systems in place, Jeff. You know what your goals are. You know what you need to be doing today, this week, next month. You know where you need to be. You've got burn down charts set, and all those things are set so that I can forget about where I'm at and be present in the moment. Let's say 10 or 12 hours of the day that we're awake. But having those systems in place and having controls in place so that you can be creative, but within the line, you're coloring, but you're coloring inside the lines so that you're not, running the business ashore. Can you talk a little bit about that balance between doing the next thing in your mind and actually doing the analytics after the potential agreement to JCPenney where you're like, no, we agreed to this, but the analysis says, no, this is bad. How do you toggle back and forth between systems to keep control of the business and the creative side of doing just the next thing so that you're not in your head in any given moment?
No, once we turned down JCPenney, it was next. There was, there was no hand wringing. There was no, what do we do now? And you just got to move forward with what, yeah. The business will be there when you get back. You can take a little time. As long as you're not making decisions that are going to sink you or the company, don't worry about it, right? Analyze the best you can, but then you got to pull the trigger and move on. And you've got to take care of yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically. It is so important. There's a chapter in the book about my depression, right? I've had mental health issues for years. And it started in my 30s with Pictionary, not because of Pictionary, but it wasn't burnout. It was because of all the decisions I had to make. I wasn't living my truth. I had to become a businessman. Didn't have to. I mean, we're blessed that we were busy and we made some money. But
what do you mean? What do you mean you weren't living your truth? Help me understand that a little better.
I'm a creator, right? Living my truth might be a little dramatic, but I like being creative. I like promoting, marketing, selling. I like building, not businesses, but I like building things. And after about 3-4 years, it was a massive business. And so my role changed, my job changed, my perception changed, my being present changed, everything about what we were doing changed. And as long as I was moving, physically moving and doing these things, I could ignore it. And when I started getting a little time to myself to really not even think, just be, as my father used to say.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy, right? I wasn't where I needed and wanted to be. And so I took some time off. I was fortunate to really, not honorable, but two very supportive business partners. They said, Rob, you're a disruption. You got to take a little time. So I went out for 6 months, came back with my quote unquote head on straight. But go play a little golf. Go, if you like meditating, great. If you like playing guitar, great. If you like taking walks, great. If you like watching television, eating pizza and Jessica's cookies, great. There you go, baby. I'll promote you. And you just got to take care of yourself. This whole notion of working 24/7 is bunk. It's crap.
Yeah. And then did the 6 months, did it do the trick? Did the 6 months off do the trick?
It did, because I was much more self-aware of what I needed at that point. So when I came back, it was a little more laid out. The partners and I talked. They go, look, we don't want this to happen again. Let's take some preventive measures so Rob doesn't go nuts on us again and be a disruption. I mean, it was. And so, yeah. So once you're, again, using the word self-aware, or at least understanding that you got a problem, then you can figure out how to deal with it. That's, I think, more people's problem, if you will, than not, is not understanding there's an issue. You just can fight through it.
I think so many entrepreneurs, from having read so many awesome biographies and knowing quite a few, so many entrepreneurs equate the action of work with genius. Like, in order to be a genius, in order to level, to be with the greats, then that my own perception is that it means work. And so therefore they get stuck in this repetitive loop that the definition of genius is work and work is genius. And so they aren't really recognizing the genius of rest, that there is
That's right.
that there is not only is the genius of what you're working created in the genesis of rest, but it is only when we are truly at rest that we can be able to allow those ideas and those thoughts and those creative inspirations to really easily come and impede our own spirits and our own souls. And so when we redefine going from work means success and work means, genius, and work means entrepreneur, like I'm not an entrepreneur unless I'm working all the time, to the definition that there's a rested genius, that there's genius found in the rest. And so the more rest you have, then the more opportunity that you will have in the future for new concepts, new ideas.
Well, let me tell you a quick story about that. And first of all, on Instagram and YouTube, everybody now, entrepreneurs are starting to understand, Jessica, what you said is absolutely true. This notion of working 24/7 doesn't work anymore. You need sleep, and the studies show you need to rest. So we were trying to come up with something unique. So the box you're seeing between you guys, right? And so we were trying to come up with a different kind of board, not a box, a board. We wanted to be unique. Everything was either a twofold or a fourfold. And so Terry and Gary and I were in the office one day, and we're just going crazy. We're screaming and yelling and creating and not promoting, just trying to figure out something different. And after about 2 hours, my brain exploded. I was like, I can't be creative anymore. I need, as I call it, I put myself in timeout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put myself in timeout. I do it all to this day. It's when I just go sit by myself. I put myself in timeout and I go over to my desk and I don't even think about the board. All I'm doing is looking out the window at the water. We had an office on, and I think, oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Oh, look at that. There's a boat. Oh, the sunshine. Zero to do with the board. A piece of paper happened to be sitting in front of me at the time. So instead of worrying about the board, I was resting, I was regenerating. I pick up this piece of paper and it just folds on itself in thirds. Holy moly. This is it. That's the board. Terry and Gary come over. That's it. We're done. Because I took a timeout, because I took a rest, because I got a break, my brain slowed down. The clutter got out of the way. So that box you see was not designed in the board into it, is because I took a timeout and made the board, and that's why the box looks the way it does.
And certainly, if we look at marketing and packaging and how much care you guys put, you and Terry and Gary put into making the box beautiful, making the board beautiful, making the pieces, it's beautiful. The game is beautiful, and from that rest, I think the message that you're trying to say is that beauty can come from taking the time that you need to decompress.
The most beautiful things
The most beautiful things.
The most beautiful
Yeah.
things come from moments of rest and recovery.
That's right.
I want to be clear. I'm kind of doing a lot of tongue in cheek and say we did this by hook and by crook and just kind of guessing. Everything was kind of thought out. It wasn't like we just went, what's next? We did a lot of times, but Jeff, you're absolutely right. That box and that board, we spent a lot of time going, what's going to be different? What do we want it to look like? We want it to sit on the coffee table. We want to be clean. We want to be, all these different design features. So it wasn't just like, okay, we got a trifold board. Good luck.
So if we can, you raised a family during this period of your life as well. And can you talk a little bit about Sam and Ben and what they brought to your rest and recovery and your sense of being present?
Well, you have 97 children, so you think you'll understand this.
We do.
They just put a different perspective on everything, right? What is important? What isn't important? Where do you want to spend your time and your energy? And they just brought a whole new level of contentment, a whole new level of fun, a whole new level of being open in scary life. I barely can, create a board game, let alone raise kids. But they're just the light of my life. They were pain in the ass, of joy, and just put things in perspective. And so when we sold the company, the IP, to Mattel in 2001, they became my focus. And so yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And they were were they still, what, school aged, I would imagine, right? At that point?
5 and 7.
Sure. And so you got to
5 and
be
7.
full-time dad, take them, go see their games, just do everything that you'd want to do to raise your kids full-time and not be pulled away from that.
And let's be honest here, because of Pictionary, I was blessed. This isn't,
Well, I'm curious. I'm curious as a parent myself and trying to raise, like, that's some pretty, how do they handle the pressure of dad's big shoes to fill? Like, are children finding, I want to be able, we have pretty high standards. We really try to make sure that our kids are, because we grow. We're very much so into growing personally ourselves. And I have found for my kids, it is a burden that they have to carry to, like, want mom and dad to be proud of them, want to be able to make a name for themselves, and it is a different level of experience for our children, I think. How do you encourage them to make a name for themselves, but be able to, still you want them to, of course, you want to help them to create within themselves ambition for their own selves. Like, how do you translate, like, dad did this amazing thing, but you're also going to be an amazing person on your own. Like, how do you work that into the conversation?
and it's hard. I didn't get it at first when they were young, but then I saw their reactions to people's reactions to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was going, oh, okay, I better, not nip it in the bud, but I need to really explain to them it's what daddy did. It's not who he is. And so you can be and do anything that you want. And it was a long process. And this didn't just happen like anything, any habit. It takes time. And so it was constantly reinforced that daddy was this guy. And so I just, as you say, encourage them to do their own thing, to be their own person, to stand up for themselves. And it didn't always work, but nothing does with children. But I'm very proud of them, because when they got a little older, they verbalized to me. They didn't want to be in my coattails. They didn't want to be on daddy's payroll, but not that, but didn't want to ride my coattails to the next success. And they're successful, both of them in their own right, has nothing to do with me. And hopefully I had a positive influence on them. I mean, by example.
Well, and it does seem like in the world of entrepreneurs who have families, there's really two ways you can do it. It does seem to be almost a dividing kind of binary look at it. One is you go build your business in your 30s and you have kids and raise kids in your 40s and 50s, or you go build your family and then the business comes a little bit later. And in that respect, you were done, really, financially. You were wanted for nothing that you couldn't achieve before you started a family. And that does give a different dynamic to where you're looking at, I'm sure, the years that you have left, the influence that you can have in their life, but you have a whole bunch of time and you don't worry about finances. Jessica and I started at 21 and 19, and we wanted to have a lot of kids. And so we had the kids basically first. And now we're in our 40s building that next thing. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it. I don't think I could make a suggestion to one person as to which way I think is better. But, do you have any comments on just that process of running a business and having a family at the same time? Because it's definitely a lot of stress, or it can be.
Yeah, I'm the latter form, whatever it is. When I sold the business, the kids were still young, so I didn't have that, as you say, that dynamic. You just have to prioritize with the family. And it's hard. I mean, I'm giving you this Pollyanna, you should prioritize your family and your kids.
Oh, no, I know. Oh, I know. Yeah.
And so I don't want to give anybody advice on that, but of course I'll have some advice that, you just have to figure out what's right. And there is no balance. There is no balance in life. It's ups and downs, it's peaks and valleys. And a buddy of mine's 86-year-old mom years ago, and she's like Irish, she's this tall, and I go, hey Joni, and I'm trying to get a little more balance. She goes, hey, Robbie, there is no balance. I go, what? She goes, it's peaks and valleys. It's managing those peaks and valleys. That's the trick. That was a terrible Irish accent.
Managing the peaks and valleys. Well, you've certainly done that with some fun. Can you talk? I didn't really get the connection to the Kentucky Derby until I read the last little bit on Joe Cornicchia. Am I saying that last name right?
Cornacchia or Cornacchia, depending on your Italian ethnicity.
Cornacchia. You've been a fan of the Kentucky Derby for a long time, and I didn't realize you may have had a horse in the race, at least adjacently. Was Joe the one that got you into go into the Derby every year?
No, he wasn't. It was years and years later. He had 2 Kentucky Derby winners. That guy, I mean, he was living life, man. He was having a ball. He made more money than all of us. I mean, he was uber rich. All he wanted to do was have fun and spend his money. He thought, I'll own a Kentucky Derby horse. And he did. I mean, I loved that guy, his attitude. And I emulated it a little bit later in life, just seeing how he conducted himself. Nice man, fair businessman, gregarious, smart guy. I mean, you don't get to be as rich as he was without being smart. And so, yeah, no, he was a big influence on just how to enjoy life, how to enjoy what you have. Whether you've got, $1 billion, $1 million, or 47 cents does not matter. Not what you have, it's what you keep and how you spend it.
Well, and speaking of spending it, one of the things that I had that I really did want to ask you, this is actually the first question I came up with, and I'm trying to ask them in an order that tells a story. But if you look at philanthropy, one of the big questions that I've got, and I've looked at the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and how they go about this. What do you have a philosophy on philanthropy that would help people think about how do we do more good than harm in giving money away? Have you looked into that, or do you have a position on that?
We all aspire to be someone else. We all do. And if I've got $1 billion and I could be like the Carnegies and everybody else and give away money, that's a different deal. That's a different mindset. If you don't have that kind of wealth and you still want to contribute, you still want to give back, you still want to donate, you still want to have philanthropy, you can do it at any level, anytime, any way. You don't have to do it with a bunch of money. Giving your time, giving your energy, giving your knowledge, giving what you know is still a way to give and contribute philanthropically, right? It's not just giving back and we just be of service. That's a different thing. This is making concerted effort to have a philanthropic bent, to leverage what you know, who you are, and what you do for other people. And if you're going to do that, then you probably have the mindset of, I want to help. And you're going to look at the people around you, look at the organizations around you. You're going to look at what's available to you, how you can contribute. And then those will be the people that you help. And sometimes it works. And sometimes, yes, Jeff, you wind up doing more harm than good, but don't let that stop you. Don't let that be a factor. Just go ahead, contribute where you can. And that's where the building happens. That's where the momentum happens. That's where you do it once, you want to do it again. So start small, start small, start small. You don't have to build a library. 20 minutes of your time, start with that, see what happens.
And let's go back to the thing that I think the soundbite or the takeaway that I could just imagine many people over the years getting the most benefit from this call, which is finding your aardvark, getting that spark in your life. Can you summarize what it feels like, what it looks like when you've got this aha moment, and any ideas on how you got there or how other people could do it too?
So the aardvark moment is the moment your life changed with your idea, your business, your goals, but you don't know what's happening in the moment. Don't see it. A lot of times you will. You go, it's like when the camera zooms in on that one moment in the movie, and you go, that was the moment. Right. And so this aardvark moment is when something so profound happens and you're unaware of it, but it is so profound. And it's to find it, you have to get out there. You have to be active. You have to try new things. You're not going to know. I didn't know I wanted to be a game inventor until I was a game inventor.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to start a business and you're actively looking for something to do, great. You're going to find your aardvark moment. But for me, the aardvark moment is just being open, being aware, being out in the universe, in the world. Then all of a sudden you get started. And then you look back and you go, that was the moment. But it's that getting started, as Jeff said early on. It's taking action on that moment. And you're going to take a lot of actions on a lot of moments, and a lot of them aren't going to work. Guess what? If one does, that's all you need.
I'm very thankful that, excuse me, I'm very thankful that 7 years ago, you took action and had a gut feeling for a networking event that had
Secret Knock with Greg Reed.
Connected. I didn't even know we could say Secret Knock. I thought it was so
we
secret.
We can say Secret Knock.
I was calling it a network event, but I'm very, at the time, 7 years ago, you didn't have the money to go to Secret Knock. It was a networking event. You don't need to pay to see people, but it did cost.
I think I still owe Greg a couple $100.
It cost some money in order to participate, but yet you were open to, open to saying, "Hey, I want to expand my circle of influence."
So I don't think Rob's heard this story.
Yeah, no.
I think this is a gift for you, Mr. Angel. The story of how I got to Secret Knock in September 2017 in San Diego, and I remember that night. I remember you had a gal. I remember what she looks like, and I remember shaking her hand. I don't remember, she was a little gal, but she was like a speaking coach or something, and she introduced us at a hotel in kind of the meeting before the big show on Saturday. But prior to that, in March of 2017, I was at IBM, and I was in New York City. I stayed at a brand new hotel that showed up at IBM. You have a booking tool. You have a website that you can basically only stay at the hotels that are in the booking tool. And this hotel had just popped up. It had been open about 4 weeks, and there was a young guy behind the counter, Carlos Collado. Carlos was at Secret Knock. But Carlos comes up to me, and it was one of those things where when you're on the road staying for business, you don't usually stay in a hotel for 6 days. But this particular scenario, I was there for an extended period. I think I flew in on a Sunday, and I didn't leave until Saturday morning, which was a long time. And the hotel was brand new. So the staff was still getting into their rhythm of figuring things out. And after day 2 or day 3, and there weren't that many guests in the hotel, after day 2 or day 3, Carlos comes up to me and he says, you seem to know everybody in this hotel, and you've only been here for 3 days. Do you mind if I ask, what do you do, and will you mentor me? And I said, well, my name's Jeff. I work for IBM, and I'd be more than happy to mentor you, but I'm not going to chase you. So here's my number. Call me, text me, email me. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Your job is to blow up my phone, and my job is to get back to you as soon as I can, but I can't chase you. And he goes, no problem. And then he did. And he started texting me and calling me all the time. And it was great, and I loved it. And I would always try to get back to him. But it was one of those things about being open, just like you're talking about, and being present. And I pride myself on being present when I'm with people, especially one-on-one like this. And so Carlos starts to build a Instagram channel, and he does a bunch of interviews, and he reaches out to David Meltzer. He reaches out to Greg Reed. And Greg says, well, if you want to interview me, the best way to do it is why don't you just come stay at the house? So Carlos takes money he didn't have, flies, and that's exactly what Greg would do, right? So actually, David Meltzer introduces Carlos to Greg, and then he books a plane ticket he can't afford to go stay at Greg Reed's house, which he can't afford. I was struggling at that point, but he says, do you mind if my mentor can come? And so Carlos Collado invited me on Greg's behalf to come and interview Greg. And Scott Duffy was there that weekend also. Got a chance to get to know Scott. And so we stayed there, and we got to see Wishman in an uncut version on a VCR tape in Greg's upper room at the house. And it was at that meeting in, I want to say, July or August of 2017 that Greg told me about Secret Knock and then invited me. And of course, I'm gonna go to that. So if it wasn't for Carlos Collado in New York City asking to be my mentor, you and I would never have met. That is.
Well, let me, and I'm going to rephrase that. As much as I love Carlos, if it wasn't for your rested state and ability to be open,
it was
you would have
teamwork,
never,
sure.
because you, but here's where this is, and I'm going to drive this down, and I know the call's going long. If you were exhausted and totally tapped out and had like expended all of your energy,
That's
you would
true.
not have even come up for air, because I know you, to even recognize that Carlos was standing in the room, let alone be able to reach out and say, hey, here's my phone number. And so that's why I'm just
That's
like,
fair.
that is the
fair.
rested state.
Yeah.
I love Carlos. And yes, Carlos had to do his part too. But you're being open and you're
right.
being in a
That's
rested state in order to even think to say, here's my phone number, dude, has like domino effect to where we are here right now today with our buddy Uncle Rob and these amazing things, giving you a hard time, because we just we love you so much. Let's see what the next 7 years is going to bring.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
So anyways, do you want to say anything at the close? What are you up to now, Rob? Is there anything
How can people
that we
find
can
and connect with you on social? And,
anything we can advent for
what
you?
What projects are you working on?
You guys are cute. Let's see, social media, the Rob Angel, wherever all the medias. You know what I'm working on. I've become how do we put that? I've become a fan of AI, so I am redoing some old projects. I mean, I've been taking a little bit of time off. I take that back. Enjoying the fruits of my labor, but I'm always doing something.
Sure.
Permanent vacation doesn't work for me. So I'm rejiggering some projects that have always been there. And I'm working on turning my book into a movie or a documentary, a docuseries.
Yeah.
That's coming up. There's a magazine called Ageist. I'm going to start contributing as a columnist to Ageist very soon. In fact, I just started doing that. If you look back here, I don't even play the guitar, but I bought two because I want to learn.
But you're learning.
That's my new hobby. So I'm taking lessons, and my goal, and it has been for many, many years, play 3 songs on stage, playing the guitar and singing.
Woo!
That is, it's a lofty goal because I don't sing and clearly I don't play the guitar. But that I'm stoked about that.
Well, everybody who's watching, everybody who's listening, please do check out @the Rob Angel and his hashtag, which pops up on my feed continuously, hashtag being open. And that is what he is all about, being open to life experiences, open to conversation. And so we just really appreciate you being on the show today, Rob. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Crazy fun.
And hopefully we get to do it again with whatever you have coming out next.
You got it. Look forward to spending more time with you, Rob. Thanks a bunch for being on the show. And you will be able to find this wherever podcasts are sold.
Yep.
On YouTube, Spotify, Overcast, and shorts on TikTok and YouTube. Thanks for being with us, Rob Angel.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day today, and we'll catch up with you offline. Love you a bunch.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.